I've been thinking about this video for a while now, and creating something to help our riders make the most of their track experience with us and develop as riders. So today, I'm in the office today. I'm going to do just that. I hope you find it useful and informative. And maybe it makes a difference for you the next time that you ride at Eagles Canyon or even another track day. So I'm going to walk through a lap at Eagles Canyon Raceway, but not in the usual way at all. In this video, we're going to focus on running the clockwise direction. Clockwise isn't a direction that we run very often. That's very unfortunate in my mind because it is great fun. It has some of the most interesting and challenging moments in riding. It's certainly much more flowing than the standard counterclockwise run direction. I have a passion for this run direction. I think it's the most interesting. It is by far my personal favorite. And so hopefully I develop some of that same passion in you with this video. So for this video, I'm going to ride the KTM RC390. It's a lightweight machine, has a little bit under 40 horsepower. So even at my skill level, it lets me more dramatically illustrate the use of the throttle, especially showing you how to get on the gas early in some places where there's opportunities in this run direction. And I even make some mistakes in this video, plenty of them in fact, and so I'll point those out as we go along. I think it's helpful to both of us to see where there's opportunities to take this run direction better, use the brakes deeper, use the throttle earlier, and pick better lines. So I'll try to cover all of that in this video. I've also captured a couple of perspectives for this that you might find helpful. So for starters, I put a camera on my throttle and brake hand. It's got a little bit of right bias, so you can see where I use the controls of the motorcycle more clearly. The other thing I did was I put a couple of small dots of paint marker on the grip and the control housing, and this makes it easier to see where I am in the throttle's range. I'll also keep a view of the dash and the tachometer handy so you can see where I'm switching gears and what I'm doing as we go through the lap. So let's start with a full lap around the circuit. And after that, I'll jump into a corner-by-corner analysis and share a few tricks and tips that I've discovered about running the track this direction. One of the things that we should discuss about running clockwise is pit out. So when you're getting on the track, you can't really see all the way down the front straight. There's a rise in the front straight before turn one. So it's really important that when you do get a bit of clear track, that when you move into turn 15, you go. Don't waste time getting onto the circuit. Go ahead and get through turn 15 quickly and get onto the track. So let's enjoy this first lap, and then after that, we'll get into the details of the turn by turn. right, welcome back. Well, let's start picking the lap apart. And I'm going to start by turn 14. There's plenty of controversy to be had about turn 15, but I want to save that for the end of the video. It's an extraordinarily important corner, but we're going to start with turn 14. So as we're coming down the straight going into turn 14, it is blind going into the turn itself. The turn is downhill and a little bit off camber. The turn in is just past mid-curbing on the outside, but you'll need to use peripheral vision because the apex of the turn will appear after you turn in, and we don't want our eyes focused on the wrong side of the track in order to find a reference point for turn in when we're going to be going the other direction. The other caution I'll issue here is, although it looks like the turn is very wide, and certainly most riders will want to set up to the far right to turn into this, it's actually not a very good place to pass. If you pass on the inside going into this corner, you'll be off camber pretty quickly, and so you're going to have some considerable faith in that front tire in order to make this turn work. It also sneaks up on you quite quickly if you go into this turn offline. The line mid-corner is wider than counterclockwise apexes late. I find it helpful to be on maintenance throttle down the hill, and this is going to run the exit slightly wide coming out, but keeps you on the rear tire through the transition into turn 13, and that makes it easier to maintain momentum into turn 13. We'll talk about that in a second. It's a very important thing here. So a little bit of throttle down the hill gets the weight off the front tire, allows you to be able to control your entry and then the turn through T14 itself. Turn 13 comes pretty quickly, so my approach is to keep the bike steering out of turn 14 and set up for turn 13 early to begin driving up the hill. Similar to how we exit turn 3 counterclockwise and set up for turn 4 early to get the drive down the hill, except here it's a very steep uphill into turn 13. Especially on this little KTM 390, the momentum up the hill is so critical. I'm even going to have to pick up a gear going up the hill because I elect to drive down turn 14 in fourth. Settles the chassis, lets me use a little more gas down the hill. So I want to get that turn 13 set up early, and I want to drive up that hill, and I'm going to pick up a gear on the way up the hill itself. Now, then coming around into turn 12, this is actually a pretty hard driving area, and you can use plenty of gas going through this section. You'll be turning into an uphill, and there's plenty of room here, even though visually it's really quite deceptive. So because of the turn into the uphill, we can carry a little bit of extra momentum. It makes it easier to commit the front tire coming into here. And visually, I like to drive right between the pavement scrapes and the curbing here. In this area, it's very forgiving. Just don't run out too far with too much momentum because we have a very tight right-hander coming in the next turn, turn 11. So for me, visual turn 11, it's the most difficult. There are a couple of good reference points here, but it's also very easy to run out of track on this exit simply because it's a very tight decreasing radius as we come through this corner. So we're coming up over the rise. The apex is slightly late, but the real trick is to stay committed to the corner just for an extra sec. Drop your head inside, aim for the end of the exit curbing as you're rolling on the throttle and getting a drive out of turn 11. The straight is now downhill, and typically the wind will be behind you. That's just the nature of how ECR usually is. And it wasn't on this day, so as you can see, my top speed is pretty modest. Go little RC390, go. Coming into turn 10, this is a very fast entry, and it's very forgiving, and it's got a lot of space in there. Even if you do get in a bit hot, it's uphill, so you can recover from some pretty bad mistakes going into this thing. Personally, I struggle with it visually so much, and we can see where I give up a lot of momentum and really don't carry the momentum into the corner that I could. I certainly don't brake hard going into it, even though it's at the end of a long straight. This has been an ongoing challenge for me running this direction. It's very challenging to get this corner right and drive into it with all the momentum that you're certainly capable of carrying here. But hang to the right till the end of the curbing. On the 390, I pick up a gear, and then we want to turn into turn 9 with a plan to stay to the left so that we can get a drive through that particular section. A good drive into turn 8 is helpful, as this is a long trail braking entry. Target carrying the brake to the back of the track and about 2/3 of the curbing on the big bike, and even sooner, as you see here on the lightweight hardware. On the front brake, get the bike pointed for a smooth curve between turn 7 and turn 6, and after that you can really pour on the gas. I elect to run turn 6 a little bit offline to protect this drive out of turn 7. And here on the 390 you can see where, basically coming out of turn 8, I roll on to full throttle. I don't need to let the gas go until I'm all the way into turn 5. And so full throttle the entire time through that whole section. And this little offline thing coming through 6, because 6 is so wide and so forgiving, it's not an issue for me to maintain full throttle through that entire section. If someone does set up wide for turn 6, this is another great place to pass. And as most of you know, I love passing on the inside of 7, going the other direction for someone that sets up for that. The concept is very similar here. Now, as we drive down the hill going into turn 5, this is visually very challenging. By the time the corner's apex appears, it's a little bit too late already. We won't have had time to brake. We won't have had time to get our eyes on it. So we're going to need a reference point coming in. And I like to use the curbing on the opposite side of the track. And the theory behind here is, if I can get my eyes and up onto that exit curbing on the other side of the track and know that I would be able to slow the motorcycle by there, well, then I'll be okay for anything that the corner itself throws at me coming into it. And so in doing so, it gives me time to visually figure out where the apex is going to be. I know I'm going to be safe looking at the back of the track until that corner's apex appears, and I can still get the turn in done in time and still carry good momentum into this corner. This kind of technique, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the video in turn 14 as well, but it works in both turn 14 and turn 5, where we're using something in advance in order to be able to allow us to buy time visually to allow the apex to appear and get into the corner correctly. Here it's obviously invisible, so this reference or something like it is absolutely essential. Once you're into turn 5 and 4 themselves, turn 4 is extremely fast. You can absolutely ham-fist the gas through here without a lot of consequence if you were to do so. The one thing you might want to watch here is driving yourself too far out coming into turn 3. So running T4 wide is a good place to pass here, and T3 opens up a lot more than you might expect, but you can run out of track if you don't at least have the bike pointed into T3 in a reasonably correct way, a good trajectory through that corner. So my usual approach is to really gas through turn 4, then roll off as I'm turning into turn 3, and you'll see that it really opens up and there's a lot of space back there that as you're coming into the corner, you would not have seen. So one of the other things that's really common, because the corner appears very tight coming into it, is it tends to make riders slow down more than necessary. This is just visual deception going on. And you can see in this lap, I make this exact mistake. And I actually get back to the gas briefly to regain some momentum that I shouldn't have chosen to lose. So as we're coming through mid-corner of turn 3, I like to look back up to the right and find the house on the top of the hill. I'm going to use the camera here that's got the right bias on it that I'm using to watch the throttle and the brake and show you how the house develops, and a picture of it comes into view a little bit sooner than the front-facing camera on the bike. So as soon as you can, find this house, because it will allow you to go ahead and get your eyes on it, have a reference that's up track, start rolling on the throttle. Just make sure that you've drifted out far enough in turn 3, and that will straighten out that corner for you and allow you to get a good drive coming out of turn 3 without running out of track, which is a very common mistake that happens to riders here. And so then we're driving downhill nice and fast into turn 2. This is just like the other direction where we want to throw 2 away a little bit in order to get turn 1 a stronger drive and a stronger corner, because we're going down a straight and it's a little bit uphill. So turn 2 is downhill and fast. Be sure to brake enough to set up turn 1 properly. And then you can see on this particular lap, I did actually cook it a bit much, and I have to give back the throttle a little bit instead of getting a really solid drive into turn 1 because I had too much speed in turn 2. You know, the other direction, we see this all the time in turn 9 and 10, but there's a great lesson here that going as fast as possible, as fast as you're capable of riding in every corner, is not always the fastest way around the track, and it doesn't always lead to the best lap times. Sometimes electively choosing to sacrifice certain portions of track to get other sections correct is the most valuable way to get around the track quickly. And so now we're driving down the front straight, and I've saved the very best for last, turn 15. This is probably the most deceptive corner on track. It's a slow corner, so any time that you spend in this corner is costly to lap times. There's not really a very good way through it. And I see many riders try to set this corner up wide and run a much broader, more U-shaped line through this corner and try to maintain a higher corner speed. Again, this is very counterintuitive, but corner speed isn't very effective in this particular turn, this direction. What's much more effective is simply getting in and out of the corner as quickly as possible. So if you drive into the corner wide and use a broad radius to try to maintain corner speed, really all you're doing is spending time in the corner and ultimately hurting your lap time. So the approach that I've found that works pretty good is about the start of the braking boards. I just simply pivot slightly and more or less run straight into the turn, doing a lot of hard braking, maybe about 300 feet before the clip point on this particular motorcycle. And then by adding a little bit of bar pressure there, allowing the reduction in speed to tighten the radius of the turn past that first clip point. I then do my best to get the bike pointed as much as necessary on the front brake and get back to the gas as reasonably quickly as possible, more or less squaring off the corner. It's very easy to run out of track on the exit of this, so we need to be mindful that the bike is genuinely pointed correctly before rolling on the throttle. But having watched many novices and experts try dozens of different lines and approaches to this corner, I've come to this particular sort of straight in, drive it in, slam on the brakes, square it off approach as the best solution. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been great fun to come into the office and create it for you, and I hope you got some value out of it. If you'd like to join us at Sport Rider Coaching in Eagles Canyon on a Clockwise race day, I hope you do. Send me a note. I'll be glad to figure out what dates we run this particular run direction. And of course, I can't wait to see you at the track.